It is October 16th, 2016, and this is your Percussion episode 65. With me over here is Laurel Black.
Hi.
And Megan Arns.
Hello.
Ben Charles, you need a haircut, buddy.
Hey, everyone. Sorry,
Looks
Casey's
great.
back this week, unfortunately.
That's right, I'm back. You guys did a great job without me. Thanks so much.
We survived.
I expected to come back and all the passwords would be changed and the Google Doc would be deleted and the Google Sheet would have a new passcode, so thanks for letting me stay on the show. It's episode 65. It's another week closer to the election, and thus another percussionist has come forward with allegations of bongo playing and percussion education. So here is our guest number 65 or so, and it is Matt Henry. He's an associate teaching professor of percussion at the University of Missouri St. Louis. He's a well-traveled clinician and a specialist of Cuban and West African musics. He performs regularly around St. Louis area with groups including the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra, Webster University Orchestra, the Union Avenue Opera, and many, many others. His new community outreach and education initiative is called Specdrum. So hello again and welcome to Matt Henry. How's it going?
Hello. Good. How are you guys?
Yeah, doing great. So hey, tell us what's going on for you lately. I know Specdrum is probably taking up a lot of your time, but what else?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm, like you guys, you got to teach every day and play as well. So grinding through the semester, it's going well. I've got a PASIC clinic this year. Uh-oh. Hang on. That's a problem.
This is good for a Halloween episode.
And I should tell you that I have, in this studio, they put in automatic lights, which means every 15 minutes, they go out.
Oh, so you have to move or something?
If I don't get up and move around. So
yeah, we have the same thing. Must be a University of Missouri system thing.
Right, no doubt.
That's funny.
Happened to me at a concert once. I was playing Nagoya marimbas and we had that on the stage at Utah State University in my undergrad degree. Yeah, on the stage, and they went out, which is very strange because we definitely were moving some.
There wasn't any sort of override for the stage.
Yeah, seriously.
Right?
I think the wrong set of lights were on. I think it was a recital or something, and the work lights were on instead of the
stage.
And whatever we saw it, and the stage looks fine, and we didn't know any better. So I think that's what happened. Yeah.
Well, I will jump up and maybe do some jumping jacks from time to time, I guess. There's no override in here, so.
It's a fitness initiative as well.
I've been grinding through the semester, and I've got a PASIC clinic this year. I've been on the World Percussion Committee for a long time.
Right.
With PAS, and submitted a clinic this year through the education umbrella, and it took, so.
Yeah, great.
Cool. Gotta start planning that.
Yeah, great. Hey, Laurel is on the Health and Wellness Committee, and you said you've been on the World Committee for a long time. What's a long time, and what is Laurel in store for?
I think that, they've restructured how the committee memberships work as of late. There's been a lot of sort of emails that I think have come out about that. I think that this is technically my 4th year as a voting member, but I went for 2 years before that. And I think that I have until 2019 as a voting member. And then you cycle off. You got to be off, I think, for 2 years or something. You come back on. So, Laurel, you're just on this year? Or have you been on there a couple of years now?
Yeah, this is my first year.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, maybe you probably have at least 4 or 6.
Cool. I think the issue is I'm probably going to apply with something every year, so I'll probably never get to vote. Because
it just means you don't vote, though, right?
Yeah, that's kind of a hard one. If I served on the adjudication committee inside the World Percussion Committee, so that's a separate, right? You'll probably have 4 or 5 people that will look at all the submissions, and when I looked at that, I just didn't submit because I didn't feel right voting on my my own clinic, So, yeah, I guess this year I did it through education for that very reason. I could have easily done it through World, but the topic of my clinic is a little bit more fundamental anyway, so it worked better for the education side, I think.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hey, well, can you tell us a little about your upcoming clinic? Maybe people who are going to PASIC, what they could expect to see?
Sure. It's first and foremost Saturday at 4 o'clock, so it's the last clinic slot of the day before PASIC closes. But basically the topic is a side-by-side comparison of djembe and conga technique. So the impetus for this, I played congas for a long time, and when I was an undergrad, played in an Afro-Cuban ensemble and salsa bands, and then when I was tasked with playing djembe, I played it like a conga player for years, and it didn't quite sound right, So, I mean, the techniques are similar, but the harmonics work entirely different on a djembe and a conga because of the thickness of the head and the tuning, So I met a gentleman here, and when I moved to St. Louis, who was a djembe player and played congas like a djembe player. I was a conga player and played djembe like a conga player, and we fixed each other's technique. His name is Adam Rugo. He's a great educator here in St. Louis too.
Where does he teach, Matt?
So Adam's now getting his music therapy degree at Maryville.
Oh, so no way.
He's in his practicums now.
Awesome.
Yeah, and he's going to be working actually in my hometown, Ferguson, Missouri, in the next 3 weeks at a school for special school district, I think it is, in St. Louis. So children and young adults with disabilities, which is going to be awesome.
Great.
Yeah, he's doing well. So cool. I wanted to propose the clinic because as I travel around to places and give presentations on either djembe technique or conga technique, there's a disparity between the two, and I wish that somebody would have told me sooner and shown me the difference. I remember when I first went to PASIC and saw Giovanni Hidalgo play congas, it blew my mind because he was playing at the same tempo as I was, but the technique, his technique was above and beyond where I was, and that really set me on a path to refine my technique. And I think that if we can just present this side by side and say, hey, here's the different things you have to do with your hands to sound like an authentic djembe player. Here's the ones you do with your hands to sound like an authentic conga player. It's going to make a big difference for people.
That doesn't happen to be the one he played with Horacio Hernandez on, does it?
It was it, man.
I was there. That was so cool.
Man, it changed my life. That's when they released that Traveling Through Time DVD and CD. Yeah, that was intense. I
just remember they walked out. He said 1, 2, 3, 4, and it was just instantly awesome and insane, just ballistically nuts and good at the same time.
Yeah, no doubt. That changed my path of study on really Afro-Cuban percussion, but then it went to West African from there. So
I think it changed my path too. I said, "Oh crap, I'm gonna go play marimba and be a composer."
I'm gonna not play conga.
Yeah, I'm gonna go do something easy like 20th century composition and marimba.
Yeah, like the stuff you've written is so easy to play, Casey. Great job.
Oh right.
Yeah, right.
Well, it was easy to write. That's what I'm saying. It was easy to write down. Yeah.
That sounds great in Finale.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Finale did a great job. Well, thanks, Matt. Megan, what are you going to tell us? What else is happening at PASIC? You're going to run over some things for us.
Yeah, so, PASIC is coming up. I'm not sure how many days it would be from when this podcast is released, but it will from today, October 16th. It's in 23 days. There's a countdown on the PASIC website. It's kind of fun.
It is also the day after the election.
Yeah. That'll be interesting.
Right.
Huh?
Maybe, it's got to be interesting.
Maybe some more percussionists will come forward about bongo rapping. Or, yeah.
Well, they'll choose to do it now, not before.
Yeah, or some saxophonists will come forward about slap tonguing or something.
That's a better one. Than
it was pretty good. I know, yeah.
We might all need some therapy at that point, or some rejoicing and celebrating or something. I already voted, actually. Did you guys vote yet? I voted just in case I had to go to PASIC a day early. So,
wow.
I would like to do the absentee voting. I would love to not, do the whole.
Yeah, I did it. I didn't want to deal with the line.
Totally. Yeah.
So 2 very important things happening, one right after the other. So if you cannot attend PASIC, you cannot send in an absentee ballot, but you can live stream several of the events. And this is something new that they started last year. I think it was semi-successful, but successful enough, obviously, that they decided to do it again. So I just wanted to let people know that that is out there and available. And if you cannot afford or cannot, because of other obligations, cannot attend PASIC, you can live stream several of the events each day. And it costs $50 per day. If you want to go ahead and do all 3 days, it's $125. And something that I didn't know until I started looking into this, because I'm going to PASIC, so I wasn't looking at it per se, but the Wednesday evening Focus Day concert is going to be live streamed for free. So if you have any doubts about whether or not you want to do this, you could kind of do a free trial on Wednesday evening. And that concert is Eric Willie, Greg Beyer, Heinrich Narbog Lawson, and Third Coast Percussion on that Focus Day opening concert. So check that out. If you can't go to PASIC, that would be a great way to check this out.
Yeah.
Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, there are 5 events each day. I won't list them, but if you just Google PASIC live streaming, you can see a schedule for that. But a lot of the university percussion groups are featured on there, and the Ethos Percussion Group also, Anders Ostrand, and all of the evening concerts too. So that was kind of the other thing. Oh, I wanted to bring up the marching groups that are featured this year are WGI Group Music City Mystique and DCI Group Carolina Crown Percussion Section. Both of those are live streamed as well. So if any of you drum corps fans and WGI fans are want to see those, you can pay $50 and see both of those on Saturday from the comfort of your living room. Finally, I just wanted to highlight what the evening concerts are this year. On Wednesday, as I said, it was the Focus Day concert, but on Thursday, it's the Pedrito Martinez group. Really, really, really awesome music. That's at 8:15 on Thursday. 8:15 on Friday, they're doing a concert called Then and Now. It's celebrating the 30th anniversary of the NEA, featuring Bill Mersch, Gordon Stout, Ji-Hae Jung, Katerina Michka, Michael Burt, and Svet Stoyanov. So all-star cast there. That's going to be a great concert, I bet.
Sounds like a marimba thing.
Yeah, exactly. And on 8 p.m. on Saturday, it's Nerve featuring Jojo Mayer. And I talked about that in the last episode a little bit, more details about Jojo Mayer, but that's his primary group right now called Nerve, and they're killer. Absolutely killer. So check those things out at PASIC or live stream them from your computer.
And I just
also
wanted to add that if you're interested in the Friday, the NEA concert with Bill Mersch and some others, on episode 3 of At Percussion, I actually talked about the NEA concert if you want the background info for that. So
yes.
There you go.
Oh, good call.
Maybe we should repost that, Ben. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, good call, Ben. Also, I'm doing a panel discussion about composition with Michael Burrett and Baljinder Sakhan. So if you want to learn more about what's easier than conga playing, again, come to that. It's like what's easier than what Matt does.
An hour a week of Casey talking wasn't enough.
I know.
For you.
I can't imagine why they wouldn't live stream that panel discussion.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah.
I'll be in the back on Facebook Live. Don't worry.
Matt, I remember you have these monster awesome conga hands, and I remember I've seen you play a couple times now. Man, can you just tell us something? I don't know how to formulate this into a question. You have awesome monster conga chops. That's the question. I don't know how to make it more sophisticated than that.
How do you do it?
Oh, thanks. Thank you, Nate.
You're gonna make me blush, Casey. Well, I appreciate that. I remember that time we met was at that day of percussion, and Lalo Davila was there too, and we played on his piece. I think it was Skojo Madness.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. That was a good time. You know, when I was an undergrad and started studying with my professor in Houston, Marvin Sparks, he really opened the door for hand drum technique and specifically conga playing. And I guess what happened is I joined salsa bands and played for 3 hours a night for a couple nights a week. And I got tired of my hands hurting all the time. So I refined the technique and really worked on it for a long time and tried to take with as many different teachers as possible. I found that, and you guys have probably found this too, the best way to study is with as many people as possible and take small pieces of information from all of them and amalgamate them into your own style. And so I think that's what I did, and just played a lot, and I taught a lot too. You know, I mean, teaching is a huge part of learning for me all the time. Mm-hmm. And so when you have to teach someone, and there's 10 different students and they all learn 10 different ways, I think it teaches yourself. You know, I teach myself all the time how to refine things about all my styles of playing, but certainly the conga technique stuff. But yeah, bourbon also helps.
Hey, can you get into that a little bit? Because seeing you on Facebook, so do you make bourbon? Do you what can you explain
what was
a little
that?
bit?
You like bought a bottle of a barrel of bourbon 10 years ago or something, and now it's aged?
Well,
share.
There's a couple of stories there, but real quickly, basically, if it's brown and from Kentucky, I'll drink it, right? And but I do enjoy bourbon. But what you were talking about, Casey, is I've had some really shoddy ideas in my life and some really great ideas in my life, and one of them was to host a bourbon party where everybody would come and their entrance was a bottle of bourbon. And
the lights.
The lights.
We can measure the time of the podcast that way, so we're at 15.
Right. So the first time I hosted that, I woke up the next day and there were 35 bottles of bourbon on my counter. And so every year I've been having a bourbon party, and it's the different themes. This last year, what you were talking about was I aged just a shelf store-bought bourbon with 10 different kinds of wood, and got a pair of pliers and a blowtorch and torched the wood and put them in mason jars and aged them for months. And then we had a taste test and a reveal of what the contents were after that. It was
that is so cool.
I still got plenty.
Ooh.
Here we go.
See, I was supposed to originally go there to do the podcast for that very reason.
Aha.
Yeah. Yeah.
Duty calls.
Now you both went to, and Megan, you're a Michael Bump student, and
Yes.
Are you also, Matt?
I am not, but I'm in spirit. I am.
Okay. I could have sworn I saw Truman. Maybe I'm mixing up the clinic roster with the.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably it. Yeah.
Matt and I actually met in the airport,
Yes.
like 15 years ago or something,
On the way
going to PASIC.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was with another St. Louis area percussionist, and I think maybe I saw you guys carrying stick or mallet bags, or you saw me carrying a stick or mallet bag, and we just started talking, and yeah, that's so funny.
Yeah, that was good times. You've come a long way, Megan.
That was a long time ago. I was probably a freshman or sophomore in college.
Hey, well, speaking of collegiality, I'm teaching this course right now called Arts 100, which is a general art class for all the music, performing arts, visual arts, all the freshmen. And it's maybe 6 sections or so, and there's always 2 teachers from different areas, so they team us up with someone from the College of Visual and Performing Arts that's not in your area. So I'm teamed up with this really cool guy named Mark Rooker, who is a metal sculptor, and he's in the jewelry department in art. So he and I have just been having a great time teaching this class and sharing our work with one another. And he has this really, really amazing project right now called the Moon Arc. So he is working on some sculptures that are going to be inside of these capsules that will go on the next SpaceX project and will be on a lunar rover, and literally he will have his art on the moon.
Gosh,
so as you can see there, if you look at that moonarts.com, I think.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so you look at this Moon Arts project, you can see there's this little capsule, and this thing is pretty small. It fits in the palm of your hand. And you'll know why, because it's I forget exactly, but the price it costs to put an ounce of weight into space is just astronomical. So there are 4 of these little pods, and that very cool metal sculpture in the middle is Mark's work. So he uses this fine, fancy laser machine to do these really, really fine laser welds, and he actually showed it to me. And I think there's only about 5 universities in the States that have these welding machines. So his art is at the center of these capsules, and it's 4 chambers, and his is in the center, of course, and each sculpture is unique to the theme of the pod, and each pod has the title Earth, or excuse me, the 4 pods are titled Earth, Metasphere, Moon, and Ether. So on their website, under Process, it says, design and fabricate a sculptural artifact that will provide a deep look at humanity through both historical and contemporary lenses, will last for thousands of years, endure the 238,855-mile trek to the moon, and will also survive the descent to the lunar surface, all in no more than 6 ounces of total payload. So there are kind of these layers. There's the exoskeleton, and then you see the more colorful inner layers, which have lots of various art and information on them. And let's see, about the exoskeleton, it says the 4 aluminum exoskeletal chambers have a cross-sectional pentagonal design. The pentagonal structure has geometric relation to the icosahedron, which is a 24-face geometric shape, which shape is representative of phytoplankton, which is, of course, the most basic form of life in our oceans. And these phytoplankton are also contained within the Earth chamber itself, so there's literally biosamples of these life forms in there. Each facet of the exoskeleton is based on the proportions and ratios of the golden triangle, demonstrating the universal geometries of organic structures. Each chamber is comprised of a 3-part assembly, including interlocking left and right halves, and a cap that provide a mounting material to the moon lander deck. The moon arc is comprised of 4 independently themed chambers. Each chamber encloses an elaborate composition of platinum etched sapphire discs, hypercolored metal murals, minerals and biological samples, and micropayloads such as nano art and 1mm microchips, and an array of artifacts that provide a contemporary view of humanity at the time of launch. So there are so many things packed inside of this little capsule. Talking with him, he said there's blessed water from various religious officiants. I think every major religion and some of the smaller religions, they've managed to put blessed water in there. There's blood samples, there's the phytoplankton, there's all sorts of material, and of course there's a lot of information inside of the microchip.
And less than 6 ounces.
In less than 6 ounces, that's right. And actually that's what's so cool about
all
this.
The holy waters.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they just mixed it up, right?
Wonder if everyone was okay with that.
Yeah, hopefully nobody got offended there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What's the name of your colleague again, Casey?
Mark Rooker. And if you look on the website, there's a link to the team, and the team is just amazing how many people are on this team. There's so many different hands going into this. And it's amazing how much work they've done. They've been working for years on this, and the thing isn't even in space yet. You know, he's really nervous. It will, the plug will get pulled or something. And the thing he's most worried about is once it gets on there, it will survive the landing and survive the launch, and the capsules won't go flying off at some point during the descent or something. But he's also really worried about getting confirmation that it's there, because there is actually some other art on the moon. One there's confirmation of, and the others there is not confirmation of. So that's the hardest part, I guess, is getting the actual visual confirmation that it's there. So just a little more. It looks
like there's another member of the team. I was just looking at the team. Looks like there are 40 people, and one's in charge of moon music.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so Professor at Carnegie Mellon.
Yeah, that's right. Music comes up in several, like moon sounds. There's sound and music comes up in several of their titles, their job descriptions, and then down there is also a composer. So I don't know what that means exactly, this composer. I didn't know who this composer was, but it sounds like the composer is either doing a new piece for it or is perhaps collecting the contributions, and I assume all this musical information will go on this this microchip.
Yeah.
So
very interesting.
Yeah. It's basically a very artistic time capsule. So reading on, it says, in some ways, each chamber serves as a time capsule, yet in other ways, they collectively provide a non-encyclopedic synthesis of the many dimensions of being human. So it's really descriptive and telling and keeping a record like a time capsule, but it's also just beautifully artistic. And I think it's just great that they chose to do these sculptures in the center of every module, rather than packing, I don't know, something. I mean, there's so much space they could have done some other things with, but they chose to do these cool artworks by Mark. So he says it's a poetic sending of earthbound things. And like we were saying, there are other works of art in space. So one is called the Boundless Cubic Lunar Aperture in 1989 by Lowry Burgess. This work is no longer in space. It was attached to a satellite, was launched, and then returned. It's a little confusing because it just went there and back. So you can read more about that if you want to. Also, one called The Fallen Astronaut in 1971 by Paul van Houwydonk. And this is basically just it's a small figurine. So what I have here says, on August 2nd, 1971, Commander David Scott of the Apollo 15 placed a 3.5-inch tall aluminum sculpture onto the dusty surface of a small crater near his parked lunar rover, along with a plaque bearing the names of 8 American astronauts and 6 Soviet cosmonauts who had died in service to the space programs. So as far as I can tell, this is actually there. We know this is there, and there is confirmation that this work of art is on the moon. One that's in question is called the Moon Museum in 1969, which is a tiny piece of ceramic wafer on which 6 artists, including Andy Warhol, drew pictures, and this was attached to the leg of the Intrepid landing module, though this has never been confirmed by NASA, and it landed on the moon in November 1969. And of course, the most famous one is the Voyager space probe, which is still out in space, never to return, has that golden record with all sorts of information and lots of music. So
yeah, when Casey started talking, I was familiar with the Voyager golden record, and I just have been sitting here like, I want to talk about that. But yeah, the Voyager golden record, it's interesting. It contained some images of Earth-like things, and then also some recordings. It has greetings in I can't remember how many languages it is, but quite a few languages. A recording of someone saying basically hello and good tidings on it. But then they also recorded, or it includes recordings of music from all around the world, from Bach to Stravinsky to Chuck Berry. And my favorite kind of fact about the golden record, the Voyager golden record, is that SNL actually did like a little weekend update type thing, and they had a character on it that was a psychic that had communicated with aliens, and the aliens said, "Send more Chuck Berry." So yeah, but the interesting thing about the Voyager one to me was that, well, 2 things. One, they thought to include the Beatles' "Here Comes the Sun" on it, but EMI wouldn't grant the record rights to this record.
Come
that was going
on!
of course they wouldn't.
And then 2, there was no intention, like they didn't send it out with the thought of like, oh, aliens will probably get this and listen to it and know what Earth music sounds like. It was more of like a kind of philosophical, symbolic gesture of human progress that we could create all this art and then send it out, far beyond where any of us will ever reach. So I thought that was pretty cool.
I think that's a great way to put it, and I think the moon arc is similar, because you think about it. Okay, so Earth gets destroyed, and we need a record of ourselves. If the Earth's destroyed, the moon's probably toast also. And if we're eradicated, there's probably all our stuff is still here. So I agree. I don't know if it's so much a practical gesture, but just a really broad, good reason to make this really, really cool art. And every little detail in it is so thought out.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing I read about it that isn't just absolutely a good example of like, yes, like think so much about what you do. You're going to create something, try to make it have as much meaning as possible into what you're putting in.
And on that note, just like how well thought out all this stuff is from engineers and scientists, with the Voyager Golden Record, they also sent out with it, a playback device, and like the instructions on how to, I can't remember exactly all the details of it, but basically they used like the atomic frequency of a hydrogen molecule or something like that, like the most abundant molecule in space, as the reference for how fast the record should turn, which I thought was like, I would have never thought, because you can't, you couldn't tell an alien, oh yeah, it should turn 3 times every second or whatever. So it's really smart to use some sort of universal constant like that. But yeah, it's cool stuff.
I wonder what the argument was for, no, we don't want to give you the rights to put the Beatles on there.
Well, I think that it wasn't so much the record going out into space as the fact that it would be, distributed on Earth as well. Something I would imagine that was it, because I don't think you generally have to secure rights to send something into space.
I would hope not.
I wouldn't think so.
Goodness
gracious.
I should say with the Moon Arc capsules, they are making a replica to go to museums on Earth also.
Oh, that's cool.
So I think that alone is really cool to see, even if it doesn't go into space. You say like, wow, this is what they came up with to put in space.
But Glenn Gould did make it into space, which I think is pretty cool.
That's right, Well-Tempered Clavier, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Speaking of super cool initiatives and groundbreaking projects, Matt recently did a crowdfunding. See, I called it.
Megan was
Lights out. Called it.
My segment took 15 minutes on the dot. See that?
This also gives him the opportunity to model that shirt that he's wearing, the Specdrum shirt.
Yeah.
Yes. And so he did a crowdfunding thing, and it was the first that I had heard about this project, and immediately I was just like, yes, we need this so bad. So, Matt, can you tell us about what Specdrum is? I know you're registered as a nonprofit organization now, and I'm assuming that hopefully this crowdfunding project initiative got you some startup funds. What's your plan, and what is this?
Well, the 501c3 is still pending. That paperwork takes about 6 months. So I started Specdrum about 2 months ago now, I guess. I guess the jumping off point for me was seeing all these things going on in the political climate in our country. And I've said for years, I teach a Popular Music in America course and a Drumming Cultures of the World course, where I get to examine sort of the history of identity and racial identity and culture and all those things throughout, using music as the catalyst for that. And I thought that if people are traversing our educational arena, right, and we're putting a stamp on them, like bachelor, master's, doctorate, whatever, basically saying go out and do good in the world, and they're still racist or homophobic or xenophobic, I feel like we're not doing something right, And so I started thinking about, so I'm a professor, I can make change, but that's only to 160 students in my pop music and drumming classes each year. How do we stop people from learning to be racist? Because you're not born that way, obviously, right? Nobody's born racist or xenophobic. They're not born anything. We all learn these things. So I decided that, I go around and do these community drumming events and drum circles and presentations. I've been doing them at Missouri Music Educators Convention for years, and nobody ever frowns while they're playing a drum. Mm-hmm. Right? I've never seen that. Nobody ever sits in a community drumming event and is just kind of bummed out, right?
Right.
And also, there's no predisposed judgment as to what you can or can't do inside of that event. You don't have to have any formal structure to move your hand and strike an instrument or scrape it, you can do it. The structure comes with time and timing and ensemble performance, but that's not what we're talking about here. And secondly, I was thinking that if I could get students in middle school and high school into a room together and I'm going to have about 17 different school districts from around the St. Louis area, just get them in a room. I can trick them with drumming, but really teach them about African culture specifically, in this realm, and eventually the African diaspora. But really what I want them to do is be in a room with a kid they normally wouldn't have met, right? So a kid from urban environment and a kid from our West County, which is the more sort of wealthy area in St. Louis. and maybe they see a kid of a different culture, of African descent or Jewish descent or Asian descent or European descent, and they think, man, I like this person. Maybe what my uncle is saying about these people isn't really true. And it just sort of puts a nick in their, thought process, maybe to start questioning what they hear in the media and or at home as general statements about these people. And I can use drumming to make that happen. So that's where it was. That's where it started. And I decided I had to do something because the government's not going to do it for us, right? The university funding is not going to make these things happen. So I decided to do crowdfunding, and Specdrum is a registered business now. You see the shirts we have. I've been doing events around here, raising money to buy instruments for all of these students, also to be able to have practice instruments to take home. So that's why I'm trying to get so many. I mean, if you get together with students once a week for 10 weeks, they're not going to know a whole lot between them if they don't practice, So, I mean, with the students that sign up for this they're going to fill out sort of kind of a commitment contract to the process of learning music and drumming and community through this. We're going to do performances at school districts, and I want it to be sort of the opposite of cancer. I want to spread a little bit of positivity through some of these students when we go back to their schools and, somebody says, man, I didn't know this person was into that, and maybe they weren't before we started. I'm not necessarily looking for musicians. I want students that are excited and open already. So students that are achieving things already, those are the ones that I want in this group, so they can spread the word of mouth, and maybe it just goes from there.
It reminds me a lot of like the famous quote from Remo Bailey when someone said, "Who's your target market?" and he said, "Everyone."
I want to ask how does it go from this idea you have and this goal you want to do to in 2 months you have over $9,000? That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and that's just really kind of friends and family and what I call my ground zero, right? Which is people that are 1 or 2 degrees separated from me. It's been really humbling, and it feels good to have that kind of support. Some were friends that are now in other areas of the country that I just put out there, and others are, a 71-year-old mother. I had a high school student give $20 because they're like, yes, we're not getting this. And that's the other thing I think that is a gap that I see in college students when they come to audition, or even if they're just the students in my humanities courses. They don't really know anything about anybody else aside from the people they grew up around. I mean, they don't really get this global idea of what it means to be human, right? We always sort of divide those things into races or events. For instance, we have Black History Month still, right? We teach that sort of once a year, which to me shows our students that it's not worthy of a complete study throughout the year. It's like a little special event. It's a car sale with the big flags and all that stuff. Yay! We do this once a year, and then it's gone. Yeah. And not to mention, they only study 10 or 15 people in the history of African Americans, and we never even get past before African Americans. I mean, let's talk about Africa and where people come from in general. And you can link that to all of our music in this country that's not Western classical. Anything. I mean, it links up. So how I went from that is I guess that everybody enjoys music. Everybody likes and thinks they can drum. I think it would be much different if it was a saxophone ensemble, right? Because people know intrinsically looking at a saxophone that you have to shape your mouth a certain way. There's all kinds of other things. But drumming, if you can shake it or you can hit it, it's easy. And there's kind of a pull, I think, people in general, when they see a drum, they just want to hit it. So I'm kind of playing off, with people too. So I think
I'm sure, these issues that you've described exist all over the country, but you and I have, living in Missouri, saw this come to a head last year with the protests at the University of Missouri and the unrest in Ferguson, among other events in the state. So I'm just curious, you said that you live in Ferguson, Missouri. Yeah. What was your experience during that tumultuous time when the protests were happening?
Yeah, so I live about 1.5 miles as the crow flies from where Michael Brown was shot in the street. So I'm pretty close to that. My neighborhood is a little bit secluded, but it was a pretty intense time. My response generally to people is that what they saw on the news was not really the Ferguson I know. I've lived there for 15 years now, and it really is a well-integrated society. Yeah, there's issues in the politics of it, which are anywhere, but I think that could have happened anywhere, and we're proving that it does happen anywhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. So that's part of my impetus for doing this. Like, how do we change it, right? Clearly, the government's not going to do it, so I had to do something. Just like, man, I gotta get out there and use my skills to try and make a difference at least, But it was pretty gruesome there for a while, a couple times I had the lights off in the house and would go from the front to the back just to make sure nobody was coming close to the house, and I sent my kids elsewhere, So it was pretty trying. But the love that I feel after that in Ferguson with all the people that I still know is even deeper now. It's just the struggle is real and worldwide. It was surreal going anywhere. I knew people that were in China during that time, and they heard people talking about Ferguson. It was kind of crazy. For a year, everywhere I went, somebody was saying Ferguson, and I know it as this little kind of romantic, nice town with a nice, brew pub and a cigar bar that's got a lot of bourbon and these community events, and to hear it portrayed as that, well, I mean, it was portrayed as it is. I can't say that those things weren't false, but only the negative things were put forth. That's that's an interesting animal to navigate there.
Well, and I said, many, many episodes ago when we talked about the protests on Megan's campus, it's I feel like it happened to happen there, but yeah, it's a nice campus. And hearing it again now that earlier today I was editing the Julia Gaines episode, and you guys talked about it again in much more detail and from Julia's perspective as an administrator. And yeah, the same thought occurred to me, like, man, this could have happened anywhere. And this is it's totally a nice place. It's a safe place. And yeah, people shouldn't, I don't know. Yeah, it's a shame. Like, nobody should feel, afraid on that campus.
Yeah, I think that people that I've run into that are percussionists, but also musicians who've taken the time and had the good fortune to delve into what we refer to as world music. They're some of the most understanding and open people that I know, because you find out the truth about culture when you do that. You subvert everything you see in the media. I think about Africa. If you think about just what people talk about in Africa, if you ask people what Africa is, they say civil war, they say, raping women, they say all these different things because that's what we see. And I think that if we can start teaching kids at a young age that there's positivity and there's beauty that comes out of these cultures, and there's people just like you, kids just like you growing up in these cultures doing these things, that maybe there's a light bulb that will go on, like I said, to question what they see and or hear from family members or that environment. We got to change something there. I mean, we got to wait for a bunch of people to die before this changes, right? Because as gruesome as that sounds, these generations have to leave us. There's a lot of people we're not going to change. You can argue with people all you want that are grown-ups and decided this way. I mean, it's not going to make any difference there. We can make a difference with the kids, I think, if we intercept them at the age before they sort of by osmosis absorb all this information and it becomes part of their core value.
Yeah, I think it's great that your initiative uses music to do something as fundamental as just to thoughtfully and non-judgmentally listen to something that is unfamiliar. And I think what you're doing with trying to catch hold of people like before they reach college age is so important, because I remember teaching the music appreciation classes, which sometimes you love doing and sometimes it's just the worst part of your day.
Sure.
And I would, but I would try to tell them the connection between, can you allow yourself to listen to this piece of music that is very unfamiliar to you because there's strings in it instead of a drum set and all this other things. And can you just let me tell you about why it is the way it is? And then just listen to it. The activity of allowing yourself to hear before judgment is so important just for learning how to accept diversity and be compassionate to people that on the outset you don't understand why they are the way they are, but there is always some reason, and it's usually a beautiful one, whether it's, a celebratory beautiful or a tragic beautiful. There is,
Sure.
yeah, there is something about music that can teach people those things, and I just think it's awesome.
In comp seminars, like, I don't know, this piece is weird and I don't know what to listen for, so I'm having a hard time. And my colleague said, well, there was a time you didn't know anything about sonata form, but you heard Beethoven and you could still listen to it and you could still understand it in a way. You can do the same thing. And they went back and forth, and I said, it's sort of like on the news when someone's going to speak and it has a little R next to it or a D next to their name indicating this is a Democrat. So you know whether to hate them or not, or you know how to how to listen to what they're saying. And I wish that was just not there, so you could just listen to them truthfully and not have any assumptions or any of that sort of thing. So yeah, I like what Laurel just said.
Yeah, I think it's important too, because you could probably get close to 100%, and I do get 100% in my classes that I teach. If you ask somebody if they listen to music, they say yes. That sounds like a ridiculous question to a lot of people, right?
In 3 years, I had one person say no. And I was like, wait, really? Like, never? And he was like, no.
I've started in lessons assigning people listening assignments, and not it's not like I need you to go to the library, get a score or anything. I'm just like, go listen to the, I don't know, the first movement of Beethoven 9 or something like that, or like the Who song or something like that. Just because it's like you are studying music, but your perspective is like this, like it's so narrow. And like I'll be the first to admit, like I like to listen to music that I know, like I listen to what I already know, but like on occasion I'll try and venture out. Whereas a lot of students, I feel like really like they put the blinders on, they listen to their country western music, and that's it.
Yeah, Ben, I think you hit that's a great point, because you can even see that with all the stuff going on with the elections now. The older you get, and if you don't open up that peripheral sort of acceptance to other things, the more tunnel vision it becomes. You can explain to people that are grown and present them with 100 factual pieces of information that discount how they believe, and they won't change their mind.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. So that's why I think it's important to get them. We got to get people young, and we got to open their minds peripherally to all the stuff that's around them, and not just this math class or this English class or all these different things,
And I like how you were using the word culture, and I think we're taught to think culture is politics and religion and race, and like it's not like we have a little culture right here. We're probably more connected than the whole Christian community in the city of Harrisonburg. The percussion community is probably a stronger culture than all these people right here who just happen to be the same religion but don't know each other.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm also leading a panel discussion at PASIC this year for the World Percussion Committee, and I entitled it Rhythm and Race. It's racial identity through the study of world percussion performance and education. So that should be an interesting one, too. The one we had last year was gender identity in percussion performance, and now it's racial identity. I think so many people don't want to talk about those things. They don't want to see them presented. And when I proposed that topic, it was sort of like, oh, do we have to use the word race? And it's like, well, I don't want to use the word race, but the United States invented it for slavery. But we're the ones that coined the term race to talk about different people. So, we have to use it, or people won't understand what we're talking about. So I think that's 1:00 on Thursday, maybe.
Great. Yeah,
that
sounds awesome.
The revolution will not be televised on that one either, Megan, but
Yeah.
Right.
We'll Facebook live stream it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, speaking of races and peoples, Laurel has a topic today as well.
Oh yeah, this looks awesome.
Yeah,
cool.
So it's
Thanks,
kind of
Matt.
ethnomusicology kind of topic.
Yeah, so initially Casey and I were gonna tag team this idea of leaving art on the moon, and then I thought, what if I try to find the oldest instrument archaeologists have ever found? That would be an interesting dichotomy, but now with everything we've talked about in terms of the, the nuances of being a human, it like really fits. So I think it's pretty cool.
Awesome.
It was discovered maybe about 7 years ago, but there was a team of archaeologists in Germany that unearthed these really thin bird bone flutes that date back to be a little over 35,000 years old, which make them the oldest man-made instruments ever found. They were found in a cave amid bones from bears and mammoths and flakes of flint from a Stone Age tool shop. And at the time, this discovery was the latest in a string of different finds, which included sculptures of the female form, which revealed that early modern humans had a sophisticated cultural and artistic life.
Locker room banter, or?
Easy.
The artifacts may provide clues as to why modern humans made it to the present day and Neanderthals did not, scientists said. So Neanderthals are another species of early human, and they lived in Europe and overlapped with modern humans, but ultimately went extinct. So modern humans, as we are, we're called Homo sapiens sapiens, but Neanderthals are just kind of a different subspecies called Homo sapien neanderthalensis. And interestingly, I just read today that through recent DNA analysis, we know that modern humans, as long as you do not come from sub-Saharan Africa, show a definite Neanderthal contribution in our DNA. Huh. Yeah, so pretty cool. But for whatever reason, Neanderthals never made it past the Sahara into certain parts of Africa. So that is a very pure Homo sapiens sapien DNA in a way down there. But scientists say that there is something analogous to a cultural arms race between the Neanderthals and the moderns, in that Neanderthals had a perfectly good behavioral strategy but tended to be culturally much more conservative, and that modern humans were more flexible and creative. And for example, we know now that modern humans banded together in larger groups than Neanderthals, which in terms of survival, you think that was, you could better fend off predators or animals or threatening groups of other people. In addition to, you now have all these different brains working together, and you're going to have more variety and a faster evolution of new ideas, whether they're strategic or creative. And according to a professor of prehistoric archaeology at Harvard, these flutes by the modern humans in Europe seem analogous to the innovations seen among early Americans, who essentially created socially and technically a new society, which is different from what it was back home. And he goes further on to say, what happens to a population? They get into a new environment, something triggers them to think about a new invention, and music in particular might have had an indirect effect, providing better social ties or improving communication. And that to see and discover an instrument this old in the archaeological record suggests that music might be a more fundamental aspect of human nature than different people today argue. And it does at least hint that music lies close to our foundation of common humanity. And as I was thinking about this more, and Casey and I were just talking about it, you realize, if you examine the ideas of the arts of a culture, art comes from a place of self-reflection of who you are and what you've experienced, and then almost an observation of yourself or other people. And then you have to take it another step and somehow exhibit that in a different form by a creation of a new thing. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so it beckons questions of the social importance of art, especially during that process, how we got to that place where we could create that feedback loop of here's what I've been through, here's what I've seen, and then combine that with the mechanisms of our tactile skills, in the Stone Age.
Sure.
And then, use the imagination to create something new. So it's a rather interesting thought that 35,000 years ago, amidst trying to not get eaten by tigers or stomped on by mammoths, people were sitting in caves making tiny little instruments.
Yeah.
Well, you said somewhere along the way that the evidence suggests that groups that did well either lived longer or made it further places had art.
Yes.
I guess,
Yes.
and of course, the skeptic in me, the question that's asked is like, okay, did they survive better because of the art and this self-reflection and self-understanding, or were they already doing well, thus they had time to make art? I'd be interested to know.
Well, yeah, and that's probably something, I don't know how we would ever actually know that. But I tend to think, like, if those that died out, we have zero art from, and I don't know if zero is quite, I mean, that's a rather strident number, but the everything, nearly everything we have artistic comes from modern humans, not Neanderthals. And so, I don't know, it seems to me it's quite connected.
They have a little recording on the website that we're reading from, it's boston.com, and I'll play it. I'll edit it in right now. And the most amazing thing to me about this recording is listen to the quality. If you guys listen to it, you'll know what I'm talking about. So of course they reconstructed the flute. They're not playing it on the actual bone flute. They reconstructed it. But the recording quality, like couldn't they like get some money for a Zoom or something? Or there's all this hiss and noise, and it's like this ancient bone flute. They bothered to reconstruct it. Listen to what it sounds like. It just sounds like a dude put his phone out like outside and played
they
it.
To make a period accurate recording. That's how it sounded back then when they had records.
Actually, that's
the
what
Stone Age people, they had to deal with a lot of hiss in their recordings.
That's what actually first occurred to me, is like, wow, so this is a recording from way back then. You can tell by the quality. No. It's well, and because
probably a scientist with his phone like on the counter.
Yeah. Well, I
Right.
think it's even worse than that. I mean, I've used my phone anyway. It's quite remarkable that all this cool research and cool information, and that was the recording they came up with.
I had a little something to add to this. Much more recent news, actually, from only about 2,000 years ago. Have you ever heard of the epitaph of Sikilos?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember in music history, it was literally the first thing in like the Grout book or whatever. And like I just remember I put in like the CD of the samples, and it just like it blew my mind how beautiful this tune was. And then later on, when I looked up the lyrics, which I'll read the translation in a second, I was like so moved by it. But for anyone that's not familiar with it, it's an epitaph, and it's the oldest complete recorded musical composition that we have. So we have older things, but they're partially damaged or something like that. This is a complete musical composition, and I'm not a music historian. I couldn't tell you exactly, but we apparently have the know-how to interpret their notation on it. And then the translation of the text is, "While you live, shine, have no grief at all. Life exists only for a short while, and time demands an end." Which I think is really eerie that's like the oldest thing that we have musically is telling us that. So anyway, that's a good little Wikipedia read if you're interested.
Oh.
And the first like complete score, right? You said
Right.
recording, but like score, first complete.
Recording as in like there's a record of it.
Right.
Yeah,
Sorry,
like
if I said
obviously not
recording,
an audio.
I mean, like,
The first score that we could find. Yeah.
Yeah.
the earliest.
I would be interested to know, like, what's the first CD ever created? Was it Aerosmith? Was it, was it Beach Boys?
What was your
Beatles
first CD?
anthology,
What
they
was the
have
first CD you guys
earliest
bought?
recorded Beatles tune, which is cool to hear because they're like 17 years old or something like that.
And it's probably awful, right? Like,
Yeah, it's okay. It's just like a little sounds like a bunch of high schoolers in a rock band, but it's actually the fidelity of it is about what Casey was describing.
I want to answer Megan's question because I'm proud of my first CD. It was Tool.
Nice. I'm not proud of mine. Mine was Chumbawamba.
Oh. Mine was Two Live Crew, As Nasty as They Want to Be.
I don't remember what my first was, but I remember the first CD in our house was my brother got the Whataburger the Good Burger soundtrack.
Gosh. That's hilarious.
my first CD was the Beach Boys' Greatest Hits.
Oh.
Which my father hated because he hates the Beach Boys. But anyway, I have just one small tangential thing that kind of fits everything we've been talking about. So today I was watching these little documentaries on Netflix about ancient history, and they've found a drum in Africa at a museum in Zimbabwe that is from the 1300s. So it's the oldest drum ever found. And it looks a lot like a djembe, but the top bowl shape is much wider, more like a small Baroque timpani, as we think of it. And it linked this drum to a certain people of Zimbabwe who have been proved through DNA to be one of the lost tribes of Israel. And their legend of this drum, and this gets kind of nutty, but that this drum connects with them as when they fled Israel, and connects to this idea of the Ark of the Covenant, which is, this ancient relic that gets talked about in many different contexts. And that though the Ark may have been this actual crate or whatever from biblical antiquity, there are certain ancient texts that talk about the Ark as a weapon, and others that talk about it almost as a communicative device, that when it was present in battle, that army would win. And so there is a collective of scholars that today believe the Ark was a drum, and that it was used by these ancient peoples to communicate during war.
So Indiana Jones got it wrong?
So it's wrong. Yeah, it's not this big gold thing that sits in a church.
I'm glad, because I thought all that was true until now.
Yeah. But it's just, I don't know, I just thought, like, that's so interesting that, they saw it as a weapon, but it was a drum that did something as simple as, like, hey, everybody, go left. And then...
It was the great strategy.
But it was, but it was seen as, like, if you have that, you can't lose because everybody knows what to do, very... But anyway, the oldest drum ever found is from the 1300s. In Africa, the oldest drum ever found.
Yeah, wow. Great. Well, man, thanks, Laurel.
That's awesome.
The history lesson.
Yeah.
Well, hey, let's try to get Matt talking just a little more before the end of the show. I think we have any
question for Matt if
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I was just wondering, Matt, for those listening what you have been talking about with your Specdrum initiative, if that resonates with other percussionists who are listening and maybe wanting to do something on as grand of a scale that you're doing, but maybe on a smaller scale. Do you have any advice for percussionists who want to make a difference in their community? Just some basic advice or evidence of what they can do to get something like this started?
Sure. I think the first thing you should do is seek out grant and funding organizations in your area. I wrote a grant to the Missouri Arts Council, said I wanted to, or the Regional Arts Commission here said I wanted to present free drumming classes and I needed to buy these drums. And they gave me $2,900 to buy instruments and to present free workshops. I think so you got to find money somewhere to do it. But secondly, you also can't think that you're going to make money doing it, right? You can't treat it like one of your normal gigs. It's got to be a work of passion. And You have to be committed to it, and you have to keep following through with people, because a lot of people, and especially the Specdrum thing, when they first hear it, they're like, I don't know if that'll work at all. And I'm saying, I guarantee them it'll work, but there's no evidence of it yet, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, you have to begin and start, to go back to what Casey said earlier. You have to build your own culture with 1 or 2 or 3 believers at a time, right? Go into school districts, give free presentations. If you're a teacher at a university, get your students to go with you. I mean, you just got to start somewhere. And it's my belief, too, that like the whole time I've been teaching, and I'm teaching my students, that I'm trying to train my replacement as I go, right? I want somebody to pick up where I left off. So I don't see this as a 6-month project, or this is going to happen in January to February and it's going to be done. My thing is that it needs to be recurring. You need to think long term and not just one-off sort of presentations or drumming events or anything like that. And then just enjoy yourself. Get your friends to help you too. I mean, like Casey said too, we have a community of people that like to play music and they like to drum. So, I mean, getting people out there, getting enough people with instruments to go out and just start playing somewhere and see what happens. See how you affect people, and take those stories with you. There's a gentleman that came to the Missouri Music Educators Drum Circle that I do every year. I think I'm doing it for 11 years now. And he swears up and down that I saved his son's life. That drum circle, he had a 4-month-old son that he brought to that drum circle that had an illness and the doctors had given up on. But after he left the drum circle, he started getting better. He was moving his hands. He was sort of playing music all the time, and the doctors don't know what happened. And he swears to me it was that drum circle. And I mean, it could be the drum circle, but it's probably the brain function, I mean, that did it. And they come back every year, and every year he cries when he hugs me and he sees me, and it's a pretty touching thing to experience. Wow. And it's hard to explain that to people in society that just look at sort of drums as, oh yeah, you're playing a rock band, or you're the dumb guy at the back of the band. I mean, there's a stigma that goes along with being a percussionist and drummer too. That was kind of tangential for sure, but yeah, I guess to answer your question, write a grant, get some money from somewhere, look at school districts, see if there's support, and just make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
I like that you say you have to look at it from a really long-term perspective. I mean, it sounds like it really has to become a part of your life, not just, I have this little ball of energy for this idea right now, and I'll shoot it out there, and when it doesn't happen, you're done. Right. We of course see that all the time.
In short, that's really the same answer to anything in music. Like you don't go into music to pull a profit, obviously, and you just have to do whatever you're passionate about in music, and just kind of know that eventually it should work out.
Yeah, but I think there's a community outreach aspect to this that is sort of just music in general. Not that you don't know that, but I think that when you start to use your passion to affect and help other people, the only thing it can spread is positivity at that point, right? I mean, and that, to me, that's the beautiful thing about it. If you're passionate about it and you're authentically trying to help people, and like you said, not make money, I mean, you will be rich. Maybe not with the dollars in your pocket, but you got to think about what life is about in the end, Man, it's not about how much money you make. It's about how many people you love and that love you, and how many people you can affect. So
that's why you should compose. You can get rich on the side from composing.
Oh right. Yeah, everybody can.
Casey's.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you see this microphone I own? Man, I own that. Thing was $100. I'm pretty sure.
I see that phone too. Do you own that phone? Because that's a relic. I think.
Yeah, look at this. Yeah, look at this thing. You should hear it ring. One day I'm gonna have Laurel call it so you guys can just hear it ring. It kind of goes like, yeah, it like goes. It kind of whimpers.
I just had a student buy a copy of Bad Touch. He bought that phone for you.
Oh, excellent, yeah. Hey, Matt Henry, thanks so much for joining us and sharing your your project and your thoughts and what you'll be doing at PASIC. And Megan, Ben, Laurel, thanks a lot. So we'll catch you guys on the next episode.
Thank you,
Sounds
guys.
good.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Awesome.
Cool. Thanks, Matt. That was good.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video today. My name is Matthew Henry. I've been teaching music for 20 years, and I'm excited to announce a new initiative in community outreach through world music education and drumming. It's called Specdrum. Throughout my teaching, I've noticed a gap in the knowledge of students that exit high school and come to the university. And that knowledge gap is of world culture. I think that it's this knowledge gap that leads some students down a path to being scared of other races, scared of other cultures. I think we can change that. I've been teaching world music for over 2 decades. When I go to various schools and present clinics or presentations or maybe a 2 to 3 day workshop, I see a change in those students. The information that I give them is completely new information. They're not getting this information in the normal curriculum.
When we studied West African drumming, it really challenged us in a way that we hadn't been challenged before.
It really inspired me to go out and do my own studies into world percussion.
Specdrum will bring students together who would normally never have met each other. Students from different school districts from all over the area, working together for one common goal.
When I knew that we were studying West African drumming that week in school, I really enjoyed going to class then and really enjoyed playing with everybody else.
When I studied West African drumming, it really made me happy.
In order to make Specdrum a success, I need 2 major things. One is a place to rehearse, perform, and call home. The Kransberg Arts Foundation has made me a member of the new Zach Performing Arts Incubator, which means they've given me that big first step. The second major component is the purchasing of instruments. That's where this GoFundMe campaign comes into play, and that's how you can help. There are lots of details below as to why we need instruments, where we're going to get them from, and how we're going to utilize them. These are going to be high quality instruments made by master drum makers in Guinea, West Africa. Please join me in making Specdrum a success. If you can't donate, please spread the word. Thank you so much.